Hey everybody, what's going on? Hellmite here, bringing you another video from Grab the Lantern today. It's Tuesday, and the patch notes for patch 9.6 have been posted, and that means it's time for another patch note rundown. As always, we'll be going through the biggest changes in this week's patch, and letting you guys know what you can be looking forward to in the coming weeks. Now, 9.6 has a bunch of changes in it, all of which are fairly middle of the road and hard to tell exactly how they're going to affect balance. There are a couple of very high-profile changes that I do want to talk about, but a lot of these are going to be very wait-and-see, these could go either way changes. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and hop right into it, starting obviously with Kayle. Now, I did talk about in my previous video, I didn't really want Riot to buff her early game because of how good her late game is. Instead, Riot kind of compromised by nerfing her late game scaling in exchange for giving her a bit more usability in the early game. I don't necessarily know how I feel about this. I think it's going to be good overall for Kayle because she'll feel a little bit more playable in exchange for being a little bit worse in the late game, which she's already going to still be really good. So this is probably just like a net buff to Kayle. So the base stat changes are actually pretty big. It does mean that she's going to be scaling up a lot worse just with levels, which are obviously the most important thing for her. And you will still need to get items. So even if you can hit level 16, if you don't have the gold for items, you're not going to be in as good of a spot as you were in previously. So that is going to be a big deal. In exchange, she got some usability on her other abilities. Celestial Blessings bonus move speed ratio is down, but it applies its effects immediately. So it doesn't disarm Kayle anymore to use your W, so it should feel a little bit more flexible in lane. Starfire Spellblade also no longer has a cast time. It's identical to her basic attack windup. That means, especially late game, you are really going to be able to stack some damage on a guy by auto-attacking, pressing E to reset, getting that auto-attack through. That's going to be a ton of burst damage that Kayle can theoretically put out all at the same time. So I really do like that. It should, again, help it feel a little bit more usable in lane as well. So these are just generally going to be quality of life buffs for Kayle in lane. She is going to be weaker in the late game, but like she's still Kayle, so she's going to be pretty good. And she did get a bunch of particle effects on all of her skins, so that's going to be really nice to check out. Neeko is another champion I want to talk about. Obviously, Riot did a hotfix on the previous patch in order to reduce the strength of her on-hit build, and then they started pulling back a little bit on the nerfs, so her attack speed growth is now up to 2.5% from 1.5%. So they're trying to keep around on-hit Neeko without completely removing it as an option, but also without making it so that's the de facto best way to play Neeko, which I think is fine. I don't think on-hit Neeko is as brutal as some people were making it out to be. I don't think it was super overpowered. I think it was annoying, and I think it was pretty good, but I would be sad if it just completely disappeared because, again, I think that any build that says, hey, one of your abilities is literally worthless can't be that bad of a build, because Neeko's Q literally does nothing. Her ultimate isn't as good as it was before. You kind of have to use it as a zoning tool, and I think it does have plenty of counterplay. You can kind of see the TSM CLG matchup on Sunday. That was a big deal. That was kind of like, yeah, okay, Neeko on hit isn't like completely bonkers. So happy they're keeping that around. Ornn is getting some quality of life buffs. I don't think this is going to be enough for him to go back to seeing pro play, but it is nice if you are an Ornn player. The Q pillar now should last until you finish casting your E. So we'll see. They said this before, and then it didn't. So hopefully it sticks for real this time. And the W cooldown is the most important part. Now it scales down with rank, so especially in the melee matchup, you should have that cooldown available more often. And it makes sense to have a lower cooldown now that it doesn't give you the shield. So I do like this change. Just a little bit of quality of life buffs for Ornn. Urgot is the weird one. I don't even know how to parse this. I play Urgot a bunch. This is going to be weird. Generally, Riot are trying to buff Urgot, and these are buffs, but the interesting thing is how good are these actually going to be? So first, his base mana regen growth are both up, so Urgot will have more mana to spam abilities in lane, which is really nice. The Echoing Flames, it no longer reduces damage on enemies hit by multiple passive procs. So if you get the Disdain flip onto somebody and hit him with 3 shotguns in a row, you're going to do a ton of damage. That's going to be absolutely insane. And speaking of the E flip, this is now the ability that grants you the shield. So when you cast it, you gain a shield for 4 seconds. So that's already really weird. And then the damage was increased. The cooldown was normalized to 14, which is just a buff because usually you max that last in the first place. And then the mana cost now scales up with rank. So this is a really odd change. It does mean that all of Urgot's defensive tools are on the same spell. So if he wants to try and dash to safety, he'll also get the shield. But at the same time, if someone's going to try and trade with him, he has to use his E if he wants the shield. Just pressing W gives you nothing now. So a really weird change. I think it incentivizes Urgot more towards the lane bully status and more towards, if they're trying to trade with you, dash at them, as opposed to just kind of playing the I'm an unkillable juggernaut in the top lane, you can't do anything to me card that he could before. So I do kind of like that change. Now, Purge no longer grants a shield, but at max rank, it costs no mana and has no cooldown, so it's just a toggle. And this means that you can just leave this on forever. So in the middle of a team fight, you kind of just press W and walk around docking people constantly. That's going to be really good for his late game potential. I think it does mean that he's sufficiently nerfed in the early game. Like I said, he doesn't have the W shield to just automatically win trades by pressing the button. But it does mean that his late game is going to be a lot better. So who knows? And finally, his ult did get buffed. Has another 900 range on just its projectile. The cast time was slightly increased, but the damage went up as well. So in general, it's going to be a buff to Urgot. I don't know that this is actually going to get him back into pro play because he doesn't have the ability to just kind of press a button and auto win a trade, have two defensive options. He doesn't really have that going anymore. And even now, I'm not sure if you actually want to be maxing Q second like you used to. It does feel like E has a pretty compelling argument for going that second as well, because you get the the cooldown doesn't decrease, but you get the bonus shield, you get the bonus damage. It does a lot of damage now. So that could be the second max, but then his wave clear goes down. Urgot has trade-offs now, is essentially what I'm trying to say. He will be stronger. He will feel more like a champion again, but he's not going to be as strong as I think he was during his professional play. So we'll have to see how that ends up shaping up. Most of these simple changes don't matter too much. They're sort of like, okay, nice buffs or nice nerfs either way. The Caitlyn buff, I think, is absolutely ridiculous. Another 50 damage at rank 1 on her ultimate is huge. And I think that means Caitlyn will just be absolutely chunking people out in the early game here. So I do think she's going to be one to watch. I don't think she was that far off of competitive viability in the first place. So that might be one reason to really start looking at Caitlyn again. But I do think that it's going to be really nice. The Jace nerfs as well are really important. Now all of these numbers look pretty low. Okay, he only lost 16 base HP. He lost 5 off his health growth. He lost 1.5 off his health regen. But all of these are really huge in the early game when you don't have that much health to start with. So aligning Jace's stats more with a ranged champion means that he will feel like a ranged champion. If you can get on top of him, you're going to do a ton of damage to him. He won't have the ability to just kind of shrug it off because, well, no, I'm actually a melee champion. Doesn't have that excuse anymore. So I do quite like this change. I think it makes him significantly worse, and it means that if you're able to get on top of him, you have the ability to trade with him and do some damage that is going to stick and do quite a bit of damage. Now, obviously, he still has Thundering Blow to disengage. He has options to get out of dodge. I'm not going to say this is going to completely solve the problems with dealing with Jace, but it does mean that if you can get there, if he's already used Thundering Blow, or if you have multiple sticky tools, so like Renekton with the 2 dashes, Kled with the double dash from Jousting, you do have options to kind of stay on top of him and really chunk him out. So that's going to be really nice to see. The Rek'Sai nerf, I really don't think is going to affect her professional viability at all. It does make her ultimate slightly worse. She's going to be waiting on a much longer cooldown on the ability in general. The ratio is down, but in general, I think she's still going to be really strong. She still has Conquer. She still has a lot of early game strengths. I wouldn't worry about it too much. It just means that you're going to be slightly less ultimate dependent. And even still, the cooldown doesn't really get that much of a cooldown increase until maximum rank, but then you have a bunch of CDR kind of offsetting that. I think she's still going to be really strong, just a little bit weaker than she was before. Sylas, I really like this nerf. People are really frustrated by Sylas's ability to go from 20% HP back to 50% HP with one button press. So, right, specifically are nerfing the heal here. The heal ratio is down 0.05 ability power, and the empowered heal is only 175% when he's below 40% HP. So, again, he should really not heal for as much as he did before. He's still going to get huge heal chunks back, so don't misunderstand. That is going to be one of his strengths, so don't expect that to disappear, but it won't be as ridiculous as it was before. You're still going to want Grievous Wounds against this guy early, I really feel, in order to cut that healing if you're going for a kill early. So in general, though, this is going to make it a little bit nicer to play against him. The Zoe nerf, again, kind of like Rek'Sai, I don't think this matters. Obviously, it can be frustrating to have to deal with her throwing E's at you constantly, but I don't think that the cooldown change is going to be enough, given that she usually matches that second in the first place. The slow change is nice, especially in the later stages of the game, when she is going to have a bunch of points in that ability. Not having the 50% slow is good, but like, you're still going to want QSS, because you're still going to go to sleep at some point, and then she's going to hit you with the Q, and you're just going to die. So I don't think this is going to matter at all for Zoe's competitive viability. It'll make her slightly weaker, so maybe less of a priority pick, but she'll still be very strong. Finally, talking about Ezreal here, Tear the Goddess being nerfed. This is really, really big. I think Ezreal is just not professionally viable anymore, because he already got some nerfs earlier, but not being able to stack tier, he's missing out on a ton of mana, he's missing out on a ton of damage, he's missing out on his ability to just kind of be the best carry in the game, doing all sorts of mixed damage. This is a huge deal. I really think this absolutely guts Ezreal. I think he's still playable, for sure, but he is nowhere near as close to the top of the table as he is currently after this nerf goes through. So, and this doesn't affect anybody else because, let's be real, no one else buys Muramana, and it doesn't affect any of the champions that do buy Archangels because they never stack tier items. So this is just an Ezreal nerf. I think he's not going to be a professional pick anymore after this patch. I think maybe he still comes out because he is plenty safe, but with his reduced ability to hurt towers and with losing so much damage off this change, I think he's just gone. Minion Demat and Overheal, I think both of these took nerfs that are going to make them significantly less palatable to professional play. I think the Overheal change, 20% of excess healing. You're going to get such a small shield that I just don't think it matters. Obviously, if the game goes late, Overheal will be just as good. But in the early game, because it's going to be so awful, I think you just go Triumph and don't worry about it. Obviously, if you're in Precision in the first place, I think you just go Triumph instead because I don't think Overheal is going to be very good anymore. Minion Demat, losing half the charges it was supposed to in exchange for giving more base damage bonus. I think this is going to be enough of a change that you just are not going to take it because I don't think it's going to be worth it. You can't stack the bonuses as much as you want to, so I really don't think that's going to be a big deal. Bounty changes, to sum all of this up, basically, it now calculates bounties based on your advantage over enemies rather than just how much gold you've gained, period. So you shouldn't have the moment where you're 0-3, but you've been able to spend a bunch of time in a side lane farming, and then you gain a bounty because you gained a bunch of gold. It'll still compare you to your opponent and say, yeah, so you've gained a bunch of gold, but you're still behind, or you've just now caught up with everybody, so you don't have a bounty then. So I do like this change. I think it'll be a little bit easier to deal with these. This is the last change that's kind of hard to parse. Basically, Rite of Change ability proc consistency. So all the abilities should be proccing on the same sort of criteria. So DOT, AoEs, on hits, all these kinds of things should be proccing consistently regardless. There are a bunch of abilities here that all have the sort of procs laid out and how they've been changed. I don't necessarily think this is going to be buffs or nerfs to any particular champion. It's just going to be something I think we're going to have to play with and kind of say, oh, okay, that's how that's supposed to work, and then kind of figure out from there if that's going to change things or not, because I don't think we can really parse it as is right now. And finally, for ranked, obviously, we did change back to the single position matchmaking, so you are just being ranked on your performance. It is no longer positional, and then Master, Grandmaster, and Challenger players are all getting the reset to Master at 0 LP, and Diamond players are all being demoted by 1 rank because they're partially resetting the top of the bracket in order to make it so that some players who got placed high on the ladder without really earning it will no longer be potentially that high. So that is going to be it for me today, guys. Go ahead and let me know which changes you're most excited for down in the comment section below. I know I am really excited to try out those Urgot changes. Looks really fun. But let me know what you guys want to see down in the comments. If you enjoyed today's video, go ahead and leave a like. And if you really enjoyed today's video, consider subscribing. I upload a video every Monday, Friday, and on patch days like today as well. And if you're looking for more Grab the Lantern content, be sure to check out my blog, link down in the description. I upload an article just about each and every single day for your enjoyment. Once again, thank you guys so very much for watching. I do appreciate it. And I'll talk to you all later.